The crystal wine glass shattered against the wall behind me, sending shards of glass tinkling across the marble floor of the dining room. I didn't flinch. After 3 years of marriage into the Marshall family, I'd grown accustomed to Eugene's temper tantrums. My name is Fatima, and I'm what my father-in-law calls just a nurse. The way he spits those words out, you'd think I'd admitted to being a serial killer rather than someone who saves lives for a living. How dare you question my judgment? Eugene's face had turned an alarming shade of red as he glared at my husband, Aston. 25 years as chief of surgery, and you think you know better than me about the value of hospital staff? I dabbed my napkin against my lips, fighting to maintain my composure. The weekly family dinner had devolved into chaos because I'd mentioned helping save a patient that morning. Apparently, that was above my station. Dad, times have changed, Aston said, his hand finding mine under the table. Nurses are the backbone of healthcare. Fatima's skills. Skills? Eugene barked out a laugh. Changing bedpans and taking temperatures? Please, son. Your mother and I didn't put you through medical school so you could marry someone who does a servant's job. Patricia, my mother-in-law, stared intently at her plate, while Savannah, my sister-in-law, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. That servant saved a man's life today when his heart stopped, I said quietly, meeting Eugene's eyes. While the doctor was still flipping through his charts, I noticed the signs and started CPR. Eugene's lip curled. Know your place, girl. You assist. You don't save. That's enough! Aston's fist came down hard on the mahogany table, making the silverware jump. I won't sit here and listen to you disrespect my wife anymore. Your wife? Eugene sneered. The girl who couldn't even get into medical school? Who settled for— I didn't settle for anything, I interrupted, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I chose nursing because I wanted to work directly with patients, to be there for them in their darkest moments. Something you seem to have forgotten about healthcare, Eugene. The room fell silent. Even Patricia looked up from her plate, eyes wide. Nobody interrupted Eugene Marshall. How dare you lecture me about healthcare? He sputtered. I built this family's legacy. The Marshall name means something in medical circles, and you— And I what? I stood up slowly, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten dinner. Tarnish it by actually caring about patients? By doing the work you consider beneath you? Savannah let out a small gasp. Aston squeezed my hand, a silent show of support. Get out, Eugene growled. Get out of my house. Gladly, I turned to Aston. I'll wait in the car. As I walked toward the door, I heard chairs scraping against the floor and Aston's voice rising in argument with his father. I paused in the doorway, looking back at Eugene. You know what the difference is between us, Eugene? When my patients thank me, it's not because of my last name. It's because I was there, holding their hand when they were scared, cleaning them up when they couldn't do it themselves, fighting for them when they couldn't fight for themselves. That's not being a servant. That's being a nurse. Later that night, as Aston and I lay in bed, he pulled me close. I'm sorry about my father, he whispered into my hair. Don't be, I replied, tracing patterns on his chest. He's the one who should be sorry. Still, the things he said— He'll understand someday, I said, thinking about the countless times I'd seen arrogant doctors humbled by circumstance. Karma has a way of teaching people the value of those they look down on. That sounds ominous, Aston chuckled. I smiled in the darkness. Not ominous, just true. Everyone needs a nurse eventually, Aston. Even the great Eugene Marshall. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Ivy, my best friend and fellow nurse. Rough night at the family dinner? The usual, I typed back. Eugene being Eugene, but I stood my ground this time. Good girl, he'll learn one day. Nobody looks down on nurses when they're flat on their back in a hospital bed. I put my phone away thinking about Ivy's words. She was right, of course. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that Eugene's lesson might come sooner rather than later. Call it nurse's intuition, but something told me change was coming to the Marshall family, whether they were ready for it or not. Code Blue, room 415. Code Blue, room 415. The overhead announcement sent me sprinting down the hospital corridor. my shoes squeaking against the freshly waxed floor. I burst into the room to find an elderly patient in cardiac arrest, his monitor screaming its warning. "Starting compressions," I called out, immediately positioning myself over his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm was muscle memory after years of practice. Ivy rushed in behind me with the crash cart. "BP's dropping fast," she reported, already preparing the defibrillator. "Where's the doctor?" I asked between compressions. "Dr. Williams is in surgery. They're paging someone else." I nodded, continuing CPR. The patient's face was turning blue. "Come on, sir," I muttered. "Stay with us." The door burst open again, and to my surprise, Leandro, our hospital administrator, rushed in. He'd been a nurse before moving into administration, and in emergencies, he never hesitated to jump in. "What's his status?" Leandro asked, pulling on gloves. "No pulse, BP critically low," Ivy reported. "Defibrillator ready." "Clear!" I called out, moving back as Leandro administered the shock. The patient's body jerked, but the monitor continued its ominous tone. "Again!" I resumed compressions while Ivy administered epinephrine. 3 more shocks and 15 minutes of CPR later, the steady beep of a normal heart rhythm filled the room. I slumped back, exhausted but relieved. "Nice work, Fatima," Leandro said, patting my shoulder. "You kept him alive until we could get his heart started again." I was wiping sweat from my forehead when Dr. Thompson finally arrived, looking flustered. "What happened here?" "Patient went into cardiac arrest," I reported professionally. "We performed CPR and administered 4 shocks. He's stable now." The doctor barely acknowledged me, turning instead to check the monitors himself. Typical. Later in the break room, Ivy handed me a coffee. "You were amazing in there. Did you see how fast you responded?" "Just doing my job," I said, but I couldn't help smiling. Unlike some people who couldn't be bothered to show up until after the crisis was over. Speaking of people who don't appreciate nurses, Ivy stirred her coffee. "How are things with the father-in-law from hell?" I groaned. "Eugene? Still his charming self. You should have seen him at dinner last night, throwing wine glasses like a toddler having a tantrum. Girl, I don't know how you handle it. If my father-in-law treated me like that..." "Fatima," Leandro appeared in the doorway. "The patient from 415 is asking for you. His family's there too." In the patient's room, I found him awake and alert, surrounded by tearful relatives. His face lit up when he saw me. "There she is!" he exclaimed weakly. "My guardian angel. This is the nurse who saved my life." His daughter hugged me tightly. "Thank you so much. Dad would have died if you hadn't acted so quickly." "I was just doing my job," I said, checking his vitals. "How are you feeling, Mr. Roberts?" "Like I got kicked in the chest by a horse," he chuckled. "But I'm alive, thanks to you." As I finished my checks, my phone buzzed. A text from Savannah. "Emergency. Dad collapsed at the clinic. They're bringing him to your hospital." My blood ran cold. I showed the message to Ivy, who'd just walked in. "Oh shit," she whispered. "What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, another text came through from Aston. "Dad's being admitted to your floor. I know it's awkward, but you're the best nurse there. Please help him." Ivy squeezed my arm. "Karma works fast, doesn't it?" "This isn't funny," I hissed, but my hands were shaking. "What if something goes wrong? What if—" "Stop," Ivy said firmly. "You're a professional. You just saved a man's life while doctors were nowhere to be found. Eugene needs a nurse right now, not a doctor. He needs you." Leandro appeared again, looking concerned. "Fatima, we have a VIP patient coming in, Dr. Eugene Marshall. Given your connection..." "I'll take him," I said, straightening my scrubs. "I'm the charge nurse on this floor, and I'm not going to let personal issues interfere with patient care." Leandro nodded approvingly. "That's why you're one of our best. The paramedics are 5 minutes out." As I walked to the emergency entrance, my heart was racing. After years of Eugene's contempt, fate had handed me exactly what I'd wished for, a chance to show him exactly what a nurse could do. But as I watched the ambulance pull up, lights flashing, I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about proving something to myself. "Time to show you what a servant can do, Eugene," I whispered, pushing through the emergency room doors. The emergency room doors burst open as the paramedics wheeled Eugene in. His face was ashen, a stark contrast to the angry red I'd seen at dinner just days ago. Patricia hurried alongside the gurney, clutching her husband's hand. BP 160-100, possible stroke symptoms, the paramedic reported. Patient experienced sudden weakness on the left side and slurred speech approximately 40 minutes ago. I switched into professional mode instantly. Get him to CT stat, I'll alert neurology. Eugene's eyes found mine, widening with recognition. For the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear in them. No, he slurred, trying to push my hands away as I checked his pupils. Not her. Eugene, stop it, Patricia snapped, surprising everyone. Let her help you. Aston rushed in, still wearing his surgical scrubs. Dad, what happened? He looked at me. Fatima, what's his status? Possible stroke. We're taking him for imaging now. I turned to the other nurse. Start the stroke protocol. I want those results ASAP. As we moved Eugene to CT, he kept trying to speak, his words coming out garbled. I leaned closer. Don't want... servant. Well, this servant is trying to save your life, I said calmly, adjusting his IV. So lie still and let me do my job. The CT results confirmed our fears. Eugene was having an ischemic stroke. The next hours were a blur of activity as we administered TPA and monitored him closely. I stayed by his side, checking his vitals every 15 minutes, watching for any changes. You're doing great, Ivy whispered during a brief handoff. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I replied, updating Eugene's chart. He's just another patient who needs help. Bullshit, she said, but you're handling it like a boss. Around midnight, Leandro stopped by to check on the situation. Eugene had stabilized, but he was still weak on his left side. Dr. Thompson wants to transfer him to a private room, Leandro said. Any preference on who takes over his care? I'll keep him, I said firmly. I'm already familiar with his case. Leandro raised an eyebrow. Are you sure, given the personal situation? I'm sure. I met his gaze. Unless you think I can't remain professional? No, I trust your judgment. He paused. Just be careful. These family situations can get complicated. As if on cue, Patricia approached us, looking exhausted. Fatima, could I speak with you? We stepped into the family room, where she surprised me by pulling me into a tight hug. Thank you, she whispered. The doctors said if he hadn't received treatment so quickly. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I know how he's treated you. No one would blame you if you'd stepped away. That's not who I am, I said simply. No, it's not. She smiled sadly. Maybe that's what he needs to see. A commotion from Eugene's room interrupted us. We rushed back to find him trying to get out of bed, fighting against Aston's restraining hands. Dad, stop. You'll hurt yourself. Want different nurse, Eugene managed to say, glaring at me. I stepped forward, my voice firm. Mr. Marshall, you're having a stroke. Every minute counts. You can request a different nurse once you're stable, but right now, I'm what you've got. So please, lie back down before you make things worse. The use of his formal name seemed to shock him. For a moment, we stared at each other, the mighty surgeon and the lowly nurse, until finally he slumped back against the pillows. That's better, I said, checking his IV. Now, can you squeeze my hand? Good. And follow my finger with your eyes. As I performed the neurological checks, I felt everyone watching. Aston, Patricia, even Savannah, who'd arrived sometime during the chaos. The room was thick with unspoken words and shifting dynamics. Your left side is showing improvement, I reported professionally. But you need rest. Visiting hours are over. Everyone out, except immediate family. I'm staying, Patricia said firmly, settling into the chair beside his bed. As the others filed out, Aston caught my arm. You don't have to do this, he whispered. We can get another nurse. I watched Eugene, now lying quietly with his eyes closed, looking vulnerable in his hospital gown. Yes, I do, I replied. Because right now, he doesn't need a daughter-in-law to resent or a servant to despise. He needs a nurse. And like it or not, that's exactly what I am. Aston kissed my forehead. You're amazing, you know that? Go get some rest, I said, checking Eugene's monitors one more time. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. As I settled in for my night shift, I couldn't help but think about Karma's strange sense of humor. Eugene had spent years looking down on my profession, and now his life literally depended on it. But as I watched him sleep, I realized this wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about something much more important, the fundamental truth about what it means to care for another human being, regardless of who they are or how they've treated you. Time for your morning exercises, I announced, entering Eugene's room with a physical therapy assistant. 3 days had passed since his stroke, and though his speech was improving, his left side remained weak. Eugene scowled at me. "Where's the doctor?" "Dr. Thompson will be here for rounds later," I said, helping him sit up. "Right now, you need to work on your mobility." "Don't want you," he muttered, but his protest lacked its usual venom. "Well, that's unfortunate," I replied cheerfully, "because I'm going to help you stand whether you like it or not, unless you'd prefer to stay in that bed forever?" Patricia, who hadn't left his side for 3 days, stifled a laugh. "Eugene, stop being difficult." With careful movements, we got him to his feet. His left leg trembled with the effort, and his face flushed with embarrassment as he clutched the walker. "Small steps," I instructed, supporting his weak side, "just to the door and back." "I know how to walk," he snapped. "Clearly," I said dryly as he stumbled. "That's why you nearly face-planted just now." Savannah, who'd been quietly watching from the corner, stepped forward. "Dad, please, let Fatima help you." He shot her a betrayed look but allowed me to steady him as we slowly made our way across the room. Halfway there, his legs began to shake more violently. "I can't," he gasped. "Yes, you can," I said firmly. 3 more steps. Count them with me." To everyone's surprise, he did. When we finally reached the door, sweat beaded on his forehead, but there was a glimmer of triumph in his eyes. "Good job," I said, helping him turn around. "Now back to bed." The return journey was harder. Halfway there, his left leg gave out completely. I caught him before he could fall, my training kicking in automatically. "I've got you," I said softly, bearing his weight until he could steady himself. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something shift in his expression, a crack in the armor of his prejudice. Later that afternoon, I was checking his vitals when Dr. Thompson arrived with his entourage of residents. "Ah, Eugene," he said jovially. "How's our star patient?" "Ask the nurse," Eugene replied, surprising everyone. "She's been here all morning." Dr. Thompson turned to me, eyebrows raised. I gave my report professionally, detailing Eugene's progress, his morning exercises, and my concerns about his blood pressure readings. "Excellent work," Dr. Thompson said. "You're lucky to have such an attentive nurse, Eugene." Eugene didn't respond, but I caught him watching me thoughtfully as I adjusted his medication. During lunch, Ivy joined me in the break room. "So, how's the dragon doing?" "Better," I said, picking at my salad. "He actually let me help him walk today without threatening to have me fired." "Progress!" Ivy grinned. "Next thing you know, he'll be admitting nurses are actually human beings." "Let's not get crazy," I laughed. A commotion in the hallway interrupted our break. I rushed out to find Eugene trying to reach the bathroom on his own, Patricia hovering anxiously nearby. "He refused to call for help," she explained frantically. "Stubborn man," I muttered, hurrying to his side. "You could have fallen." "Don't need help to pee," he growled, but his grip on the walker was white-knuckled. "Right, because you're doing such a great job on your own," I said, taking his arm. "Come on, let's get you there before you end up back in the ER. As I helped him back to bed afterward, he cleared his throat. "Thank you," he mumbled, so quietly I almost missed it. "I'm sorry, what was that?" I couldn't resist teasing. Did the great Eugene just thank a lowly nurse? He glared at me, but there was less heat in it than before. "Don't push it." That evening, as I was finishing my shift, Savannah stopped me in the hallway. "You know," she said, "I've never seen anyone handle Dad like you do, not even Mom." "I've had practice with difficult patients," I shrugged. "No, it's more than that." She touched my arm. "You could have requested a transfer or treated him coldly, and no one would have blamed you. But instead, you're giving him your best care, even after everything he's said to you. That's what nurses do, I said simply. Maybe that's what Dad needs to understand, she mused, that it's not about status or titles. It's about being there when someone needs you. As if to prove her point, Eugene's voice called out from his room. Fatima? I shared a surprised look with Savannah. It was the first time he'd ever used my name. Coming! I called back, heading toward his room. Behind me, I heard Savannah on the phone with Aston. You won't believe what just happened. Your blood pressure is still higher than we'd like, I said, removing the cuff from Eugene's arm. A week had passed since his stroke, and while his speech had almost returned to normal, his recovery was proving more challenging than expected. I know my own blood pressure, he grumbled, but without the usual bite. Been a doctor longer than you've been alive. And now you're a patient, I reminded him, adjusting his medication drip. A rather stubborn one. Patricia looked up from her magazine. She's right, dear. You need to listen to her. Before Eugene could respond, Aston walked in, still in his surgical scrubs. How's the patient today? Your wife won't let me leave this bed, Eugene complained. Because the last time you tried, you nearly collapsed, I pointed out. Remember? Aston grinned. Listen to her, Dad. Fatima knows what she's doing. Eugene shifted uncomfortably, then winced. I noticed immediately. Pain in your chest again? It's nothing, he muttered. I'll be the judge of that. I pressed my stethoscope to his chest, listening carefully. Your heart rhythm's irregular. I'm ordering an ECG. I don't need... Yes, you do, I cut him off. Unless you'd prefer another stroke? This time maybe on your right side, so you can't move at all? The room fell silent. Eugene stared at me, and for a moment I worried I'd gone too far. Then, surprisingly, he chuckled. You've got... spirit. I'll give you that. Within minutes, I had the ECG machine ready. As I attached the leads to his chest, I caught him watching me with an unreadable expression. What? I asked. You're good at this, he said quietly. Better than some doctors I've known. Before I could respond, Ivy burst into the room. Fatima, we need you in 412. Patient's coding. Stay put, I ordered Eugene. I'll be back to check these results. I spent the next 20 minutes helping stabilize the other patient. When I returned to Eugene's room, I found him in an intense discussion with Patricia. Can't deny it anymore, she was saying. You've seen how she works. They fell silent when I entered. I checked the ECG results, frowning at what I saw. I'm calling Dr. Thompson, I announced. These readings concern me. What do you see? Eugene asked, professional curiosity evident in his voice. I pointed to the pattern on the printout. These ST segment changes suggest possible cardiac ischemia, he finished, looking impressed despite himself. You caught that quickly. That's what happens when you pay attention to your patients instead of just their charts, I said pointedly. Later that evening, after Dr. Thompson had adjusted Eugene's medication, I found Savannah waiting at the nurse's station. Dad's been asking for you, she said. He's actually been worried you're angry at him. Me? Angry at him? I laughed. That's new. When I entered his room, Eugene was alone for the first time since his admission. Patricia had finally gone home to rest. You needed something? I asked, checking his IV. Sit down for a moment, he said, gesturing to the chair beside his bed. When I hesitated, he added, Please. I sat, waiting. I overheard something today, he began, while you were helping that other patient. The family, they were praising you, saying how you saved their father's life last week. I was just doing my job. No, he shook his head. You were doing more than that. You were being what I used to be before I got so caught up in titles and prestige. He looked down at his weakened left hand. I forgot what it means to really care for patients. It's never too late to remember, I said softly. When I had the stroke, he continued, I was terrified. Not just of dying, but of being helpless. And you didn't gloat or take advantage. You just helped. Even after everything I'd said. That's what nurses do, I said, standing to adjust his pillows. We help people regardless of who they are or how they've treated us. I'm beginning to understand that, he replied. And I'm beginning to understand why Aston chose you. Before I could respond, his monitors started beeping rapidly. His face had gone pale, and he was clutching his chest. Eugene? I grabbed his wrist, checking his pulse. What's wrong? Can't breathe, he gasped. I hit the emergency call button. I need a crash cart in here now. As the room filled with medical staff, I stayed by Eugene's side, holding his hand as we fought to stabilize him once again. In that moment, all the past insults and conflicts disappeared. He wasn't my difficult father-in-law anymore. He was just a patient who needed my help, and I would help him, because that's what nurses do. That's what I do. It was a mild heart attack, Dr. Thompson explained to the family gathered in Eugene's room. Thanks to Fatima's quick response, we caught it early and prevented major damage. Eugene lay propped up in bed, looking smaller somehow. Patricia clutched his hand while Aston and Savannah stood nearby, their faces etched with worry. She saved my life, Eugene said quietly. Again. I busied myself checking his vitals, trying to ignore the weight of everyone's stares. The monitors showed his heart rate and blood pressure were finally stable after last night's crisis. You should have seen her, Mom, Savannah said. She was so calm, giving orders, keeping everything under control while Dad was... She trailed off, her voice cracking. That's enough, I said firmly. Eugene needs rest, not a fan club. Always so professional, Eugene managed a weak smile, even when I was such an ass. Language, dear, Patricia scolded, but she was smiling too. Leandro appeared in the doorway. Fatima, could I speak with you for a moment? In the hallway, he handed me a piece of paper. We found this in Eugene's personal effects when we changed him into a hospital gown last night. It's addressed to you. I unfolded the paper, recognizing Eugene's handwriting despite its shakiness. Fatima, I've been trying to find the right words. Pride makes fools of us all, especially old doctors who think they know everything. I was wrong about you, wrong about nurses, wrong about so many things. Fatima? Ivy's voice interrupted my reading. Eugene's asking for you. I tucked the letter into my pocket and hurried back into the room. Eugene was attempting to sit up straighter, grimacing with the effort. Let me help, I moved to adjust his position. You need to take it easy. Need to say something, he insisted, while I still can. Dad, please, Aston started, but Eugene held up his hand. No, son, this needs to be said. He turned to me. I've been a fool, Fatima, a proud, arrogant fool. Eugene, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was stronger now. I looked down on nurses my entire career, thought they were beneath me. But these past 2 weeks, you've shown me what real healthcare is about. The room was dead silent. Even the usual hospital bustle outside seemed to have quieted. You didn't just treat my symptoms, he continued. You treated me, the scared, stubborn old man who needed help but was too proud to admit it. You showed more dignity and professionalism than I ever did, even when I was at my worst. Patricia was crying quietly. Savannah moved to put an arm around her mother's shoulders. I wrote you a letter, Eugene said. Did they give it to you? I patted my pocket. Just got it. Haven't finished reading it yet. Read it later, he said. Right now, I want everyone to hear this. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Fatima. For everything. For every dismissive comment, every insult, every time I made you feel less than what you are, an exceptional healthcare professional, and an even more exceptional person. Eugene, I started, my own eyes growing wet. Let me finish, he insisted. Aston, you chose well, better than your old man deserved. And Fatima, he reached for my hand. I'd be honored if you'd continue to be my nurse, and my daughter-in-law. I squeezed his hand, unable to speak for a moment. Aston came up behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders. Well, Ivy said from the doorway where she'd been watching. I never thought I'd see the day. Neither did I admitted, wiping my eyes. But Eugene, this doesn't mean I'm going to stop bossing you around. You're still my patient. He laughed, then winced, clutching his chest. Wouldn't have it any other way. Speaking of which, I checked my watch. It's time for your medication and some rest. Everyone out. As the family filed out, Patricia hung back. Thank you, she whispered, hugging me. Not just for saving him, but for helping him change. Later during my break, I finally read the rest of Eugene's letter. The words blurred as tears fell onto the paper. I hope someday you can forgive an old man's prejudice. You've taught me more about healthcare in 2 weeks than I learned in 40 years of practice. Most importantly, you've taught me that true strength isn't in titles or degrees, but in the capacity to care for others regardless of how they treat you. I'm proud to call you family. Hey! Ivy appeared with coffee. You okay? I showed her the letter. Karma works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? Sure does, she grinned. Now come on, your favorite patient is probably trying to get out of bed again. I tucked the letter away carefully. There would be time to treasure it later. Right now, I had a job to do. The job I'd always been proud of, regardless of what anyone thought. Ready for your discharge? I asked, wheeling a wheelchair into Eugene's room. 3 weeks had passed since his admission, and he was finally going home. I can walk, he protested, but there was no bite in his words anymore. Hospital policy, I reminded him. Besides, I've earned the right to wheel you out of here. He chuckled, allowing me to help him into the chair. That you have. Patricia bustled around the room, gathering their belongings. Don't forget the letter, dear. What letter? I asked. Eugene pulled an envelope from his robe pocket. You'll see, but not until after the party tonight. The family had planned a dinner to celebrate Eugene's recovery. I'd tried to decline, saying I had a shift, but Leandro had mysteriously rearranged the schedule to give me the evening off. Speaking of the party, Savannah appeared in the doorway. Everything's ready at the house. And Dad, the guests are arriving. Guests? I raised an eyebrow. I thought this was just family. It is family, Eugene said cryptically. All kinds of family. As I wheeled Eugene toward the exit, hospital staff kept stopping us. Nurses, orderlies, even the cafeteria workers came to wish him well. He knew all their names now, something the old Eugene would never have bothered to learn. Take care of yourself, Dr. Marshall, called Maria from housekeeping. Thank you, Maria. Keep that son of yours studying. He'll make a great nurse one day. In the parking lot, Aston helped his father into the car while Patricia hugged me. See you tonight, she whispered, and wear something nice. This is important to him. That evening, I stood before the Marshall's front door, smoothing my dress nervously. Aston squeezed my hand. Ready? Why do I feel like I'm walking into something bigger than a family dinner? He just smiled and opened the door. The house was full of people, but not just the usual family members. I recognized faces from the hospital. Ivy, Leandro, Maria, the physical therapy team, even Dr. Thompson. They all turned to applaud as we entered. What's going on? I whispered to Aston. Eugene stood up from his chair, steadier now but still using a cane. He cleared his throat for attention. Thank you all for coming, he began. Most of you know why we're here, but my daughter-in-law seems confused. He smiled at me. Fatima, come here, please. Bewildered, I walked to the center of the room. 3 weeks ago, Eugene continued, I had a stroke. It could have been the end of me, but more importantly, it could have been the end of my ignorance. He pulled out the letter from earlier. I've spent my career looking down on nurses, believing they were somehow lesser than doctors. I was wrong. He unfolded the paper. This is my formal letter of resignation as chief of surgery. Gasps filled the room. I stared at him in shock. Instead, he continued, I'm establishing the Marshall Nursing Excellence Program at the hospital, a scholarship fund to support nursing education and advancement. He turned to me. And I want you, Fatima, to help run it. Me? I squeaked. Who better? He smiled. You've shown me what nursing truly means. It's not just following doctors' orders or changing bedpans. It's being there in the darkest moments, fighting for patients when they can't fight for themselves, seeing them as people first and cases second. Ivy was openly crying. Leandro beamed proudly. The program will fully fund nursing education for deserving candidates, Eugene continued, including Maria's son, who's already been accepted as our first scholar. Maria clutched her hands to her chest, tears streaming down her face. But most importantly, Eugene turned back to me, it will stand as a reminder that healthcare isn't about hierarchy. It's about healing, about caring, about being there when people need you most. He held out the letter. Will you help me make this happen? I took the letter with trembling hands. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Aston whispered behind me. Yes, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. Yes, of course. The room erupted in applause. Eugene pulled me into a hug, our first ever. Thank you, he whispered, for not giving up on this old fool. Thank you, I replied, for finally seeing us, seeing me. Patricia called for champagne, and the room filled with the pop of corks and happy chatter. As glasses were passed around, I felt Ivy nudge me. So, she grinned, still think karma's finished with you? I watched Eugene moving through the crowd, talking with nurses and staff members he would have ignored just weeks ago. He caught my eye and raised his glass. No, I smiled, raising mine in return. I think karma's just getting started. The party continued late into the night, but it wasn't just a celebration of Eugene's recovery. It was a celebration of transformation, of barriers broken, prejudices overcome, and the recognition that sometimes the greatest victories come not from revenge, but from change. And that's why nursing isn't just a job, it's a calling, I concluded, facing the eager faces of the first class of Marshall Nursing Excellence Program scholars. Any questions? A young man in the front row raised his hand. Did Dr. Eugene really throw a wine glass at you? Miguel! Maria scolded from the back of the room, where she sat beaming at her son. It's okay, I laughed. Yes, he did. And speaking of Eugene... The door opened and Eugene himself walked in, his cane tapping against the floor. He moved slower these days, but his mind was as sharp as ever. Sorry I'm late, he announced. Had to finish interviewing candidates for next semester's program. The students straightened in their seats. Eugene's reputation still commanded respect, but now for different reasons. Tell them about the patient you had yesterday, I suggested, knowing the story would drive home our point. Eugene settled into a chair. Ah, yes, a surgeon, actually. Brilliant man, technically speaking. But he came in with severe pneumonia, and do you know what his biggest complaint was? The students shook their heads. That he had to take orders from nurses. Eugene smiled wryly. Reminded me of someone I used to know. What did you tell him? Miguel asked. I told him to shut up and listen to his nurses if he wanted to live. Eugene winked at me. Then I told him about how my own nurse saved my life by being stubborn enough to stand up to me. After class, as the students filed out, Eugene touched my arm. Got a minute? We walked to the hospital garden, where a new bench had been installed under a blooming cherry tree. Patricia was already there, holding a small gift bag. What's this about? I asked. Sit. Eugene patted the bench. I've been doing some thinking. Dangerous habit, I teased, but sat down. The program's been running for 3 months now, he said, and watching you with those students, you're not just teaching them nursing skills, you're teaching them dignity, compassion, and strength. Patricia handed me the gift bag. Inside was a nameplate. Fatima Marshall, Director of Nursing Education. We want you to take over the program completely, Eugene said. I'll still consult, but it's time for the next generation to lead. I don't know what to say, I whispered, tracing the letters with my finger. Say you'll do it, Patricia urged. You've already changed so many lives. Think how many more you could help. Before I could respond, Ivy burst into the garden. Fatima! Emergency in the ICU! We need you! I jumped up, professional instincts kicking in. What's happening? Multiple trauma coming in. Car accident. They're asking for our best nurses. I turned to Eugene and Patricia. I have to... Go, Eugene smiled. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. We'll finish this conversation later. As I rushed to the ICU with Ivy, I heard Eugene's voice behind me. That's my daughter-in-law, best damn nurse in the hospital. Hours later, after the trauma patients were stabilized, I found Aston waiting for me at the nurses' station. Heard you worked another miracle, he said, pulling me close. It was a team effort, I replied, leaning into him. Your father offered me the director position. I know, he grinned. He's been planning it for weeks. Says it's time the program was run by someone who truly understands what nursing means. Speaking of your father, I nodded toward Eugene's old room, now occupied by the surgeon with pneumonia. Inside, Eugene sat beside the bed, deep in conversation with the patient. We moved closer to listen. Thought I was too good to take orders from nurses, the surgeon was saying. But watching them work today, especially during the trauma, I've never seen such coordination, such skill. Sounds familiar, Eugene chuckled. Let me tell you about the nurse who changed my life. I pulled Aston away, leaving Eugene to his storytelling. In the hallway, Savannah was posting flyers for the next semester's nursing program. Applications have doubled, she reported excitedly. Word's getting around about what we're doing here. I looked at the nameplate in my hand, then at the flyers, then at Eugene still talking animatedly to the humbled surgeon. Everything had changed, yet everything felt exactly right. You know, Aston said softly, when you first started standing up to Dad, I was worried it would tear the family apart. Instead, it made us stronger. That's because it was never about revenge, I replied, watching a new group of nursing students walk past, their faces bright with purpose. It was about showing people the truth, that sometimes the greatest strength lies in caring for others, even when they don't deserve it, especially when they don't deserve it. Ready to change more lives, Director Marshall? Ivy called, holding up another emergency chart. I smiled, already moving toward the next challenge. Always ready, that's what nurses do.